My name is Terry, and I have a testimony that I want to share, something that happened to me about 20 years ago. And it was a miraculous thing. I actually had a encounter with Jesus Christ. But my story will lead up into that as I explain it. I don't know how this is going to turn out. So, I'm told the story a few times, and my pastor asked if I would do a YouTube video with it. So here I am. I'm going to share the story with you. It all happened about 20 years ago. I was visiting with my brother. Actually, my brother was visiting with me and his wife and my wife, and we were all sitting at a card table playing cards. And he was going to church and I wasn't going to church. I was a heathen. But he had this really thick Bible. I mean, it was like a concordance. It was huge, an exhausted concordance. But he had it sitting up on the table, and we're playing cards, and it's kind of hard to throw the cards up over that Bible and everything. So I get kind of fed up with it. I'm like, man, because I know he's Christian, and I know he meant well. But I said, man, can you move that off the table? And he's like, no, I don't think so. I said, whatever, man. So we kept on playing, and the more we played, the more I'd sit there and look at that thing and just about drive me crazy. So I said, hey, man, what do I got to do to get you to get that off the table? And he said, well, if you go to church with me tomorrow, I'll take it off the table. I was like, fine, whatever, man, just get it off my table. He moves it immediately. He moves it. So we go to church with him the next day. And I've been in and out of churches all my life, so it's not like I've never been to church and, that I didn't know any better or anything. But ignorance is like that. You can go to church all your life and you can be ignorant as dumb as a box of rocks, and that was me. But anyway, we're at this church, and there just happened to be an evangelist there that day. And this evangelist was preached a pretty good message. I mean, it got a hold of me, and the word that he preached that day, it really touched me. And so when he did the altar call, a bunch of people went down there, and of course I did too. And in the midst of the crowd, this preacher at the altar call, he points out into the crowd like this, and he goes, "You!" And being my ignorant self, I thought he was pointing towards me, but I wasn't sure, so I did this little number and this little number, because I thought maybe surely he's talking to somebody else. He ain't talking to me. Sure enough, he was talking to me, because he said, yeah. I said, I go, me? And he goes, yeah, you. He said, God just told me, he said, to tell you to always look forward and to never look back. And that I was going to go on a long journey, and in the end, I would reap the rewards. And my ignorant flesh was thinking, rewards? I like the sound of that. It's all about them Benjamins. I loved that money. Never had any, but I loved it. But anyway, I took that to heart, and I, went down to the altar, and I asked Jesus back in my heart again, and here I was, And so we started going to this church, and we had been going there for a few years, and things were going great, over a few years, and the preacher there was great. I mean, the preacher there was awesome. I loved him, with everything I had, and I couldn't wait to get there every Sunday night, every Wednesday. We was there, and the devil started getting a hold of me, and and started telling me that this is not the church I want you in. You need to go find yourself another church because these people don't know what they're talking about. And then I went there one Sunday night, I think it was, Sunday afternoon maybe, and the pastor at this church, he just kept on staring at me. I mean, it seemed like the whole service, he was like directly talking to me. And I thought, man, this is, not the church for me. My heart was being convicted. It really was. I got up and I stormed out of that church. I was like, I'm out of here, man. I ain't never coming back to this church. He keeps on staring at me. Why you got to preach to me? You need to preach to them, not me. So I left. I took my wife, my kids with me. And we said, well, we're just going to find another church. That's all there is to it. So we did. We got out, and I don't know how. I don't know what had happened. I mean, it was a few months later. I don't recall exactly how long it was, but it was, I do know the day, and it was Martin Luther King's birthday. And me and my wife, we wound up in a march going downtown. I don't know how. I can't remember how we got there, but we were there. And we did this march with a whole bunch of black folk. Again, I don't know how we got there. Not that I'm not racist or anything like that right there. It's just, Lord works in mysterious ways. That's all I got to say about that. So anyway, we did the march. We went back to their church that they had, and they had a really nice church. It had balconies, and it was pretty good size. And there was an evangelist preaching there that day. And man, he was preaching up a whopper of a service. Well, me and my wife, we were up in the balcony. And, right in the middle of the service, now I didn't even make it to altar call. Right in the middle of the service, this preacher points out into the crowd, and he says, "You!" And me being skeptical, I kind of thought he was talking to me. I thought he might be pointing on me. I was way up in the balcony, so I just kind of did this number and this number. And I said, "Me?" And he said, "Yeah, you the only white man in this place, ain't you?" And I was like, I suddenly realized that I was. Me and my wife were the only white people in this whole church. And I said, yeah. And he said, "Just now, as I was preaching, the Lord spoke to me and told me to tell you that you must always look forward and to never look back. And that you was going to go on a long journey. And in the end, you would reap the rewards." Word for word. I looked at my wife. She looked at me. And we was like, oh, wow. Wow. What just happened here? I asked her, I said, "That's word for word, wasn't it?" She's like, "Yeah." So, praise the Lord, Here we go, okay, I'm wondering, when, Lord, what's going on, Lord, okay, I'm in it, Lord, I'm in it, apparently something's going on here, Lord, okay. So, life went on. I don't think we ever went back to that church. I don't recall going back there. Nothing, not that I wouldn't have liked to go back there, but I just didn't. Life took me a different direction, and I couldn't even exactly tell you how long it was after that. I mean, time just had a tendency to just skip in my life. I know that I worked and, I provided and did all kinds of other things, but we was looking for another church. And we wound up at this another Pentecostal church, a little small church. Had probably, 10 people in it, tops. Small church. We went in there, me and my wife, and got to know the pastor, and we started going to this church. I'm not going to give any names of these churches and places, but that ain't got nothing relevant to do with my story. But we've been going to this church for a little while. Loved the pastor and his wife. And one night the pastor comes to me, and she says, it was a female pastor. She says, "Brother Terry, we have an evangelist coming up here from Arkansas tonight, And man, you're just gonna love him. You're just gonna love him. He's awesome. And I'm like, oh, well, okay, that's cool. Cool. I'm all for that. And so we come back to church that night, and I no sooner than walk in the door. Now this is a full gospel Pentecostal church, but I walk, they're holy rollers, man. Yeah. Anyway, love the Lord. I walk in the door, and this man that was coming to church that night, he turns and looks at me. I literally just walked in the door. And he turns and he looked at me, and he walks straight up to me, and he comes up to me and he just grabs my head. And he says, he's shaking me and everything. And he says, brother, he says, I don't know who you are. I never met you in my life. He said, but my golly, he said, the moment that I set my eyes on you, the Lord spoke to me, and he told me to tell you to always look forward and to never look back. And that you was going to go on a long journey. And in the end, you would reap the rewards. What? No, really. My wife was standing right beside me, so I have witness to this. And, it just blowed me away. That was 3 times by 3 different evangelists. They weren't even, the regular preachers at these churches. They were evangelists, men sent from God. I'm excited. I'm super, super, super excited. And life goes on, and I'm just digging it. Every time a little thing happened, I'd like, is that it, Lord? Is that what they were talking about, Lord? Is this it, Lord? Is that what's going on, Lord? I was going out of my mind, trying to figure out, always look forward, never look back, Well, life goes on. And I got discouraged. Satan be up there on my back, get out of this church. You don't need to be here. So he caused a situation to occur, and I'm not going to go into detail about it, but I quit the church. Went on. And it was been years. A few more years had passed by, and I can't tell you exactly how long. But I wasn't the greatest at taking care of my responsibilities. So I had bills. Bills were catching up to me, and child support. I go to court, and go down there before the judge, and the judge says, I'm not trying to skip any of this part of it. I went to the court, and the judge was standing up there, and the prosecuting attorney was, pressing on him about, me paying my dues. And I don't know, he was just having one of them days, where, he might have felt sorry for me, I guess. And so he was shaking his head like this right here, and goes, you know what, Mr. Rogers? He said, what can you pay? And at that moment, the only words that came out of my mouth was, you know what, Your Honor, I don't know what I can pay. And he just kind of had this puzzled look on his face. He's about ready to give me a break. And he says, you know what? He says, have you seen our new county jail? And I was, dumbfounded. It's like, yeah, I've seen it, nice. And he says, well, I'm going to let you sit in there for a couple of weeks, and you can think about this. And whenever you come back out, we'll come up with a number. And my thinking, I was thinking to myself, I can stand on my head for 2 weeks in the jail, in the county jail. No big deal. Not even, I'm oblivious to what's about to happen. And the bailiff come up to me and said, "Turn around and cuff up." And you know, at that moment, I'm like, oh wow, I'm going over to the county. I mean, I don't know what happened. So, because I know now, but I mean, at that moment, I was pretty oblivious, ignorant. And so they cuff me up. I take me over to the cell or to the jail, and they bring me in there, and of course, they book you in, and they give you your clothes to put in the county, and then they send you to the doctor, and the doctor asked me a few questions, you know, and then after I was done with the doctor, they sent me over to a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist was asking me a few different questions, and one of the questions he asked me was I suicidal? Well, I'm not a suicidal person. I don't believe I've ever really been a suicidal person. But at that very moment, what pops in my brain is suicidal. Privileges. That stupid thought jumped into my head. And I said, yes, I'm suicidal. And he made me strip my greens, the clothes they gave me, and they gave me a pair of paper shorts, and they ordered me down into the hole, what they call the hole. It's a holding cell, and you have TV monitors on you. And when I walked into this cell, all there was in there was just these 2 steel bunks, a toilet, and a sink, a steel sink. There's no mattresses, no sheets, no blankets, no pillows, just 2 steel bunks and a bare cold floor, and me in paper shorts. Yeah. They closed the door, and I thought, well, boy, this is a fine howdy-do. And, you know, nothing really at that moment, nothing really had, you know, daunted on me. Was the beginning, you know, being in the hole. And, you know, when they put you in the hole in a county jail, they normally hold you for, you know, an extended amount of time. That if you admit you're suicidal. And, heck, you might not never get out of there, I don't know. But they put me in there, and I'm going to skip a little ahead here. I was 3 days in, and the 3rd day that I was there, it just so happened to have been my birthday that day. And I got to thinking, here I am on my birthday, all alone in the county. And that's it. And I think at that moment, I started realizing just how alone I really was, you know, and started becoming depressed. And suddenly I started getting these thoughts that, excuse me, came out of nowhere. I started getting these thoughts that I wasn't worthy of anybody's love. And they started getting stronger and stronger, that, you know, this depression. And I felt the words of Satan pounding in the back of my head, saying, he was saying things to me like, you're a piece of crap. You've been a piece of crap all your life, and nobody loves you, and you'll never amount to anything, and you burnt bridges, you know, and you owe so much debt, and you'll never get ahead, and you're just a piece of crap. You're nothing. And I was crying. But I was, it wasn't normal. I wasn't just sitting there like, no. I started crying harder. The tears started flowing. And the snot was just running out of the front of my face, slobber, and it was pretty pathetic. And I couldn't catch my breath. I was like, I couldn't breathe. And he told me, he said, if you stand up on that bunk and dive your head off down in that floor. Now, he wanted me to get up on the top bunk, and he wanted me to dive my head off in this floor. And he said to me, if you dive your head off into this floor, you'll kill yourself, and you won't ever have to worry no more about anything, and you can just end it, because you ain't worth a crap. You ain't never been worth a crap. You burnt bridges on both ends. You're just a piece of crap, and you'll never amount to anything. And I said, you're right. You're absolutely right. In my tears and my crying, and I mean, you can just imagine. Now, I could sit here and go through all the drama, but just think in your mind, my eyes were all welled up, and my face was just dripping. And I'm crying, and I'm standing on top of that bunk, and I'm looking down at that floor, and I'm, that's it. I'm done. I told myself, this is the end right now. This is it. And I leaned out forward, had my hands behind my back, and I said, this is it, Terry. You're going. This is it. You're done. This is it. You're done. And I remember leaning forward and leaning forward and leaning forward. And then all of a sudden, from out of nowhere, right beside me, right here beside me, and my eyes were welled up, and I had so many tears, I could see a figure. I knew it was Jesus. I knew it was Jesus. And I'm sitting there crying, and I'm like, only like 10 times more dramatic. And he just calmly says to me, he says, if you dive off that bunk and smash your head into the floor and kill yourself, you will not enter into heaven, and you know this. And I said, in my despair, yeah, but God. And he said, yeah, but nothing. He said, or you could dive your head off down on this floor and just become a vegetable and never be able to hug and love on your wife and children ever again. Yeah, but God. And he said, yeah, but nothing. In the most calmest fashion. I mean, it was so calm. And I said, but God, I've tried serving you all my life, and I've always failed miserably. And he said, true, you have. He said, but I got a mission for you. I want you to get down off that bunk and ask for a Bible. So I did. At that moment, I knew that this was it. He said, go get you a Bible. Read it. So I wiped my face off, and as soon as I wiped my face off and sit down, and he was gone. Just like that. Gone. And so I climbed down off that bunk, and I went over there and started yelling out for the guards. And they wouldn't answer me, so I started kicking the door, bam, 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 bam. Bring me a Bible! Bring me a Bible! Bring me a Bible! About 2 hours of that, and they finally bring me a Bible. Take the guy a Bible down there, dang! They finally bring me back a Bible, and I get that Bible, and they hand it to me. And I go over there and I sit down on my bunk, and I open up the pages and everything, and I'm sitting there, reading it, and I'm thinking, oh my God, God's going to give me a revelation. All I got to do is read this right here, and He's going to tell me exactly what I need to do. And I just read, and I read, and I read, and I read, and I read. And then I started realizing that you should have just handed me this Bible upside down. Because honestly, I didn't understand a word I was reading. I didn't get it. I was like, what, what is this, Lord? You give me the word, I'm reading it. Now, it ain't the first time I ever read a Bible, but it's the first time I got real serious about it. But it wasn't clicking. Nothing was clicking. No great revelation that I was expecting, a great and awesome revelation, and I started, thinking that all those preachers over the years had told me to always look forward and never look back. And then I was going to go on a long journey. And in the end, I would reap the rewards. Is this it? You give me a Bible, I'm in the hole, and I ain't got nothing here. But I didn't give up. I was like, okay. Well, next day, the psychiatrist comes down, and they open up the door, and he comes in, and he goes, how you doing? I said, I'm doing great. I'm doing great. I said, I'm not suicidal. He says, well, great. Let me see what I can do about getting your clothes back for you. I was like, no, you don't understand. And I looked him straight in the eye, and I said, I am not suicidal. When I came in here the other day, I don't know what made me think that, what made me say that, but I am not suicidal. Now, he took me serious. He's seen the look in my eye, and he said, okay, I'll see what I can do about getting you put back out in population. And, normally when you admit suicide, you can't just convince them, and they just let you out, put you back in the population. And, but he did. And within the next few hours, they had given me back my clothes, and they had sent me into population. And so they give me my, extra changes of clothes throughout the weeks and everything. And I had my Bible, and, I don't know what else I had with me, some paper. But when you're in a county jail, what happens is they will open one door and you will step in, and that's just imagine this. And then they would close that door, and then they would open up the other door, and then you would go in to the room that you're supposed to be in. Okay? So if you've never been to county jail, this is what happens. So they bring me around, and it's all glass doors and glass windows everywhere, and there's no outside, there's no going outside. They got an inside basketball court, it's all glassed in to where they can watch you in your activities in there. But they open up the door, and I walk into there, and then they close the door. And it takes a few minutes for them to open up the other door, whatever procedures they have to do. I don't know. I'm just standing there holding my stuff for, it seemed like forever. And as I was standing there, I was looking into the window, and I seen 100 men. I don't know, it might have been 99, and I was number 100. But I know there in each pod, there was like 4 different pods in this jail. And in the pod that I was in, there was 100 men in there. And as I was looking through there, I was watching them. Some of them were watching TV. Some of them were just walking around. Some of them were sitting there playing cards at tables. And other ones were in their cells and stuff. And so I thought, wow, it's the first time I ever seen, that. That's, wow. And right at that very moment, God spoke to me again. And He said to me, I'm going to make you a fisher of men. I was like, okay, sounds good to me. So they open up the door, and I go in. They send me back to my room, and I put my stuff away. They give me a locker, you know, and I have a cellie, and I introduce myself, you know, and I put my stuff in my locker, and I grab up my Bible, and I just go back out there into the hall, and you know, where everybody's at, and I sit down at a table. There wasn't nobody sitting at this table. I just sat down at it, and I just opened up that Bible, and you know, I just continued to read it like I was down in the hole, hoping that there was going to be some sort of a relevance here. And I hadn't been reading that thing for just a few minutes, and this guy come up to me and he goes, "Hey man, what you reading?" And I looked down at it, I looked back up at him, I said, "Well, I'm reading the Bible." And I don't know what happened at that point, but the Lord opened up my mouth, and I shared my testimony with what just happened to me in the hole with this man. The experience I had, my Christ encounter. And when I was done telling him the story, he asked me how he can ask Jesus into his life, into his heart. And I said, "Well, brother, you just take my hand and we'll pray right now." And I took his hands and we prayed, and he asked Jesus into his heart. That was the most awesome experience I ever had. After that moment, I had went back to my cell, and my cellie wasn't in there at the moment, but I went in there, and I was just sitting there thinking, wow, what just happened? That was awesome. Well, you know what? The next day, the same thing happened. I'm sitting out there at a table, I'm reading my Bible, and another brother come up and asked me, "What you reading?" I said, "Well, I'm reading the Bible." And the next thing I know, I'm sharing my testimony with him, and he asked Jesus in his heart when I was done talking about that. Again, I'm thinking to myself, that was cool. That was really cool. And the next day, it happened again. And then the next day, now I can go on and on. I was only supposed to be in there for 2 weeks, according to that judge. And somehow, some way, I wound up being in there for 4 months. And in that 4 months' time, I couldn't tell you exactly how many men that God used me to share this testimony with them. And they asked that if Jesus can come in their hearts, and they accepted Christ. I can't count how many. In 4 months, there were sometimes just one person. There were some days where there was 2 at the table. There was some times there was 4 at the table. They had that, like I mentioned earlier, a basketball foyer, that you went out there and it's all glassed in where the guards could see you, and they go out there and they play basketball and sit around and, talk and do push-ups and sit-ups and stuff. And they had lights out at 10 o'clock, and so at like 9:30, a handful of us would go out there in the foyer, and we would just share the Word of God, and we would share experiences and read some scriptures and pray. And over the weeks and into the months, it become where we had larger groups, 10 to 20, Now there was 100 men in this pod. And there was one day or one night that every man that was in that pod was out there in that basketball foyer. Each and every man was holding hands. Each and every man was singing praises to God. And at the end of, the time that we would be out there, somebody at the very end of it, before they told us to lock down, one of my brothers, one of my faithful brothers that was there with me, that helped me and guided me and taught me a lot, he would yell out, "Who you with?" And everybody would say, "Jesus." And he'd say, "Who?" Louder. "Jesus." "Who?" "Jesus." It was pretty awesome. And it was quite the experience. And so after 4 months of being in there, they released me. They let me out. And I went on out there into the world, and I trying to get my bills together, get things in order, and start serving God in the way that He wanted me to serve Him. Well, of course, it's funny how life goes. You think you've got it all, and you had this experience, and life is just, great for the moment. But there always comes a time to where it's just not enough. And there was times it wasn't. And, Satan's always there. He's always there to, knock you down. And he did. I let him in, and I let him knock me down, and I let him convince me that, what I was doing wasn't gonna work out. And I believe him. I let things happen, and I let things get to me, and I had some issues, some anger issues. So life goes on. And I got out of the church again. I stopped going to church. I stopped reading the Bible. I tried picking it up, over the years. I tried picking it up and trying to figure it out and all. I can remind myself, all the words kept coming to me. Always look forward and never look back. And that I was going to go on a long journey. And in the end, I would reap the rewards. Always in the back of my mind. Well, life went on. Things didn't work out with the wife that I was working with, so we got a divorce. Trying to juggle with the kids. Trying to handle those responsibilities, And a few more years go by, and we're rounding about 15 years since the beginning of this. And actually now it's been, at this point right now, it's been, I guess, 13 years. Because I met my wife that I have now 7 years ago, and she is an awesome Christian lady, and the Lord really blessed me with this one. And we, at first we didn't go to church, but I knew her background. She was a traveling minister. Her dad and mom were ministers, and they had traveled, to other countries and stuff, and just here now. It's been a little over a year or so. We really started getting into the Word of God and started searching our hearts and our souls, trying to get back into that. And of all the places that I could wind up at, all the churches, I wind up back at the church this all started at. Yeah. And I walked into that church, and they welcomed me with with open arms, and I haven't seen you in a while. Yeah, the prodigal son has returned. And I was welcome there, and I really started getting back into the Word and started really realizing then that I always look forward and never look back was my habits in life. I never did change them. The long journey, it had to be a long journey because I'm too stubborn to know when enough was enough. God knows exactly our hearts and what our souls is going to happen. He knows our thoughts, every thought. He knows everything about us. There ain't nothing that gets by him. Whenever he told me, that I was going to go on a long journey, he knew what he's talking about. Always look forward and never look back was, the theme. And I really had to learn. It's funny that I never really thought about it that way all those years. I'm looking for him. Is that you, Lord? Is that you, Lord? Yeah, that was me. You still wasn't listening, idiot. So the journey is still going on. I'm learning each and every day. I'm a lot stronger today than I was then. And I pray that this testimony will reach out and touch somebody in some way. And just let you know, man, that Christ is real. I mean, I was just, before I even started this, I was down on my knees praying. And I was just, yelling, saying, God, I know you're real. You was there. I saw you. I visually saw you right beside me. You wasn't this far away. And for me to miss that boat, to step out on the water as Peter did, I started to sink just like Peter. Jesus reached out and he grabbed me and he pulled me back in. And then, once I got back in the boat, the storm didn't calm right then. It wasn't until we actually, when you're out on the water, that storm's still going on. But as soon as we got back in the boat, that's when the storm calmed. And God's got a great plan for my life, and I'm really gung ho about this, and I know things are growing in me. My heart and my spirit are just flourishing and just screaming out there for all of God's love. So I really hope and I pray that this testimony touches somebody. I know I went way over. What am I at? 43 minutes. So God bless you all, and thank you for watching. In Jesus' name, I hope that everything works out in your life, and I hope that this video has done some good to somebody out there. Thank you for watching.